Hello. As we are going from Palm Sunday to Easter, we're now in Matthew chapter 22. And Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a marriage feast for his son, and sent his servants to call those who were invited to the marriage feast, but they would not come. So again he sent other servants. He said, 'Tell those who are invited that I've got everything ready. Come to the marriage feast.' But the people made light of it, and the rest seized the servants, treated them shamefully, and killed them. And the king was angry, and he sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then he said to the servants, 'The wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. So go to the thoroughfares, invite to the marriage feast as many as you find.' And those servants went out into the streets and gathered all whom they found, both bad and good. So the wedding hall was filled with guests." Jesus said, "Many are called, but few are chosen." You see, the invitation went out, and there were those who took it lightly. There were those who responded violently. There were those who rejected the invitation of the king. Then those who were invited last, they were quite a crowd. They weren't people of status. They weren't people of wealth. They were common people of the streets. But they came. And Jesus says, "Many are called, but few are chosen." Pharisees came together and were trying to entangle Jesus and entrap him and trip him up. They sent disciples to him with the Herodians, and they said, "Teacher, we know that you're true and teach the way of God, and you do not regard the position of men. So tell us what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" You see, for a lot of people in that time, they had a hard time paying Caesar because they believed they had one allegiance to God and not to Caesar. But Jesus, aware of their malice, he said, "Why do you put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the money for the tax." And they brought him a coin, and he said, "Whose likeness is on this?" They said, "Caesar's." And he said, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." And they heard it, they marveled, they left him and went away. But now there were some Sadducees, another group. Representatives from that group want to trip Jesus up. They didn't believe there was resurrection, and so they asked a question. They said, "Moses has said if a man dies having no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. And there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died, had no children, left his wife to his brother, and so too the second and third down to the 7th. After them all, the woman died. In the resurrection, to which of the 7 will she be wife?" And Jesus said, "You know neither the scriptures nor the power of God, for in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage. And for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living." And when the crowd heard it, they were astonished at his teaching. You see, Jesus' critics continually trying to trip him up, trap him with their words, the crowds continually amazed. And when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they came together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him and said, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments depend all the law and the prophets." See, it's about love, loving God, loving others, love in action, love that is real and genuine and makes a difference in the person's heart who's loving God, who's loving others, and makes a difference in others' lives. But then Jesus asked a question as Pharisees were gathered around. He said, "What do you think of the Christ? Whose son is he?" And they said, "The son of David." And he said, "How is it then that David, who was inspired by the Spirit, calls him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, till I put my enemies under thy feet'? If David calls him Lord, how is he his son?" And no one was able to answer him a word. Nor from that day did anyone dare ask him any more questions. You see, Jesus is often put on trial by people. He's often there's a debate that happens, and people get all intellectual about it and get all into their questions and into their heads and fail to operate from their hearts. So often people get caught up in their own vested interests instead of the interests of God, and the reason that God sent Jesus Christ among us to help us to know about loving God with all of our beings and to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. You see, any religion worth having is one that directs us to God, yes, but also directs us outwardly to be a blessing in this world. And our Christianity is to be that. We're to care about others. We're to reach out to others. We're to operate with social distancing if that is part of the love of the day. So let us do what Jesus says. Let us love God. Let us love our neighbors as we love ourselves. God bless you going forward from Palm Sunday to Easter.